Hello, folks. Do you wish you could reach that 10,000 followers on Instagram and finally unlock that link in the story feature? Hey, I'm right there with you. Are you looking for Instagram growth tactics that work? No shade, no spam, or money required? Well, do you need help laying out a plan for your Instagram content that resonates with your followers? Well, if so, then today is your lucky day, because that's what we're going to be talking about all on today's show. I am joined here with the lovely ladies of Tailwind, and we are going to be I'm Jeff C. from Manly Pimpships, by the way, and I'm here with Rebecca Radice and Kristen Dolan, and we are going to be talking all about how to grow your reach on Instagram. But we would love for you guys, as we start this show, if you would sprinkle the love across the interwebs and let people know about us. It helps us out. And also, we're starting a new thing today as we did it last week with the Pinterest show. But would you like to win one of these selfie lights? I know I would. And they're awesome. And the way you win these, this is how it goes. So as we're talking today, if you see like just a nugget of wisdom and something that is so smart that you want to bookmark it, well, we want you to do that too. And we use the hashtag Tailwind tip and put it right below, and that way we can find that later and we have a drawing. And so the more times you give those Tailwind tips, the more you're entered, and you could win one of these awesome selfie lights. So, ladies, oh my gosh, do you have yours? Have you played with this yet? Because I think it's pretty awesome.
Yes. Okay. So did you click to the strobe? Because I was like,
no.
Whoa.
There's a. Yes. I think your battery may be shorting out because I don't have a strobe feature on mine. But
I think you have to hold it down.
You do.
You have to hold it down a
couple of times. Yeah.
Is it like if I'm getting? Oh, there it is. So if I get if I'm getting mugged out in the park when I'm doing my selfies, I can like flash for help. Very cool.
That's right.
Now I can't turn it off. There we go. Okay. Very cool.
Hold it down.
Yeah. So
Jesse, new to strobe lights.
That's right. It's, here in East Texas, we're lucky we have lights. And plumbing. The thing is, so just want to make clear for the people who are watching, let us know if you have something that you found on Instagram using Tailwind that works really well for you. That's a great way to have a Tailwind tip. So drop that down below because, who was the winner last week, Kristen? Do you remember who won last week? We sent one to?
Yes, she actually hasn't sent me her address yet, but it was a username Kate. I'm waiting on that.
Yeah, so once we so make sure when we do the drawing that you follow up, because we want to send this to you because it's really, really cool. So that's what's happening today. And also, we do want to bring up this if you're struggling, and we're going to be throwing out information like crazy today. And sometimes, you can get a little overwhelmed. Well, we have a guide that you guys can download. It's at bit.ly/10k.fb. -FB. So it's right there on the screen. That way you can download. Tell us about this guide that you guys put together. This is pretty awesome. Rebecca, what is this all about?
Well, I don't want to steal Kristen's thunder because this is her baby, her brainstorm, her miraculous work. But yeah, I think the most exciting part to me is it just takes away all the barriers. Anything that you ever thought was holding you back from growth.
Rebecca is just, look at that. That's a perfect picture of her. Kristen, why don't you talk about the guide right now as Rebecca's kind of frozen there. So talk about this guide that you had put together that is your baby, so you might as well talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the 10K ebook that we wrote, we kind of noticed there were a lot of quick fixes and, kind of shortcut strategies circulating around the internet with some tactics that maybe might harm your Instagram account instead of helping it. And we really found out, and through our research and case studies, talking to members, just the way to reach 10,000 followers is really about consistency and a long-term strategy. And so we really knocked out a pretty enormous ebook, just kind of detailing that path to 10,000 followers and all the different steps and foundations you need to lay in order to reach that goal. And so it has a lot of features in it. There's a full content plan in there that will help you create 5 weeks of a total content strategy, posts every day for Instagram. There's lots of worksheets and visuals in there to help you accomplish different goals in it, like zeroing in on your target audience, and just a few different features in there. And then we also interviewed a lot of our members who have reached over 10,000 followers and asked them for tips and advice on what they wish they had known. And we sprinkled that throughout the pages of this entire thing. So it's a really great resource. If your goal is to reach 10,000 followers, I highly suggest you download it. It's got some amazing information in there for you.
Awesome. So we'll try to get Rebecca back. Rebecca, why don't, if you're watching, let me go here real quick and see. Let's see. See if you can log in again, because you're frozen there, and I'm not really sure what's going on. But so let's go ahead and start kind of with how we can, Kristen, grow our reach. I mean, everybody wants to get to that 10,000. I mean, I know I do. I'm still not there yet. I would love to be able to have that swipe up link on stories to, send people to my blog posts, do all sorts of things like that. So what is kind of like the first tip that you would give people to really get going on growing their reach on Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first tip is really foundational, and it's also something that seems to be missing from a lot of these resources that are circulating. And I know everyone kind of wants to jump right into posting beautiful pictures and writing engaging captions and stories and all of that, without kind of laying the foundation necessarily for who you're targeting. So the first tip that we really talk about in the guide, and that we would say is the first step towards getting towards 10,000 followers, is really zeroing in on your target audience and kind of understanding what your unique power is as a brand or presence on Instagram, and those benefits that you provide someone who wants to follow you. So in the ebook that we just talked about, we have a few worksheets kind of centering around this, but it really comes down to answering some key questions, which include, what benefits are you providing through your Instagram presence? So is that just general inspiration? Is that being the right product at the right time? And then kind of narrowing in on who benefits the most from your brand or presence on Instagram, whose need are you answering with what you're providing on your Instagram through your content, captions, posts, videos, stories, etc. And then there's also an element of there about kind of seeing who your existing competitors are and what they're doing, and kind of who they're benefiting, who they're following, because from that you can learn, are the people following your competitors really, would they also benefit from your presence? Or is there a way that you could differentiate from what your competitors are offering so that you can capture a whole new market of people that they're not necessarily speaking to, but that you can really capture and convey your message to through your content? And so that's really the first step that I would recommend, that we would recommend, is that you really need to get to know your target audience, their likes, their interests, understand their demographics. And you can find that through Instagram, through Insights directly in the app. Or we obviously in Tailwind, we have analytics available that'll kind of give you a lot of information about who's following you and what is really resonating with them out of your existing content that's on Instagram.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for that. So number one, we got to zero in on our target audience, and Tailwind has a lot of tools for that. Rebecca, thanks for coming back, by the way.
Yes, good to be back.
Yeah. So can you, what are some other ways that we can zero in using our target, trying to find our target audience? I mean, that's, I know a lot of marketers, we say that a lot. It's like, find your target audience. So, and there's kind of a struggle with that because it gets kicked around a lot. So do you have any other tips for other than what Kristen said to really kind of, I mean, what did you do? Because you have an incredible Instagram account. So how did you identify what works for your audience?
Well, are we, I, just to be clear, because I get to hear everything that Kristen just shared, are we talking about how to find your audience or how to connect with them?
It's really how to zero in, how you use, I mean, because I know you, because you have a really tight brand and a really, you know what your audience is about. So what were the steps that you kind of went through when you were to zero in on your target? I mean, because you had to start somewhere, but then how did you like drill down and figure out what's really resonating with people who are following you on Instagram?
Well, yeah, I know that, Kristen, you just talked about really looking at your analytics, and so much of it is identifying what are those outliers. So what's within a specific post that you can test over and over again. So for me, it was things like long form content as opposed to short form. It was asking questions as opposed to maybe just sharing a tip. So you really do have to always be testing to get a feel for what's actually working before you can hop over to your analytics and start to see those trends, start to see those themes within that. And then it's getting into a regular conversation with your Instagram followers as well, so that they have the ability to give you direct feedback into what they're looking for, what's really resonating, what is the reason that they come to you on a daily basis. I see a lot of that happening in the conversations on Instagram, where it just feels very organic and authentic. Whereas I don't think Facebook, or certainly not Twitter, ever really felt that way, especially in the early days, and definitely not today, where we've evolved to with more of that push marketing over on both of those channels. Whereas Instagram really is all about getting to know, going really deep with your audience. And once you do that, they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you exactly what they're looking for. And I think a lot of that does go back to what I said about questions and making sure you're asking the right questions too. Maybe the tough questions, the not so popular questions, the questions that can feel rather awkward, but will lead you to that next best answer.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we go into the tip number 2 on how to reach 10,000 followers on Instagram, I want to make sure you guys, if you do have questions about Instagram or how Tailwind works for Instagram, make sure you ask those down below, and we'll try to bring those up today during the show. And if you're just joining us, make sure that if you see something that's like Rebecca or Kristen says that's just genius, do hashtag Tailwind tip and then write out the point or the nugget of information that they just gave. I see some people just dropping in hashtag Tailwind tip, but we want to know what the actual tip is, and you could win your very own Selfie light from Tailwind. So continue to do that as we're going during the show, because I have a little preview, and these ladies are going to be dropping a ton of great content. So they're coming. So just be ready. Be ready with that hashtag. So Rebecca, what is the second tip that you would give people who would or who are trying to, they're maybe they're just a couple thousand followers away from hitting that 10K mark? What's the second tip you would give them to help them increase their reach?
Really optimize your profile. This is another big opportunity that we have on Instagram to be crystal clear within what we do, who we help, and use those keywords, those terms, those phrases that we want to be known for, that we already are known for, and that we want to make sure our content is surfacing, our profile is surfacing when people are looking for those within search. Because I'm certain we've all used search within Instagram before, where maybe you're typing in Instagram marketers or social media marketing or whatever it is that you're wanting to learn about, and those accounts, those people will come up in a list, and you want to make sure that you're showing up as well. But on the flip side of that, you also want to make sure that you're consistent, so that that story, that message that you're trying to convey is consistent on Instagram as well as on your website and everywhere else, so that as people are getting to know you, as they're learning a little bit more about you, when they bounce over to your website or some other property, they're not getting confused as to, well, wait a second, why is she talking about this over here on Instagram, off in a completely different way over here? So you want to keep that branding very similar to everything from your profile pic, or if you're using a logo, making sure that that is consistent across all of your other networks. And I know, Kristen, you have a ton more ways that we can optimize.
Yeah. So kind of jumping off of the point about profile photos, I think there's a decision to be made whether you use like a personal photo of yourself, or if you're going to use a logo, if you have a blog or a company, a brand, what makes the most sense for you to use as your profile photo. Generally, I always say that for a profile that is kind of manned by one personality, whether it's an influencer, a blogger, etc., there's really one person behind the brand, then it should be a profile photo of you. And whenever you kind of go through that process of selecting the photo that you use, you should always include at least your head and shoulders, because nobody really connects very well with a floating head picture. And that the background of your photo should either be completely neutral or should at least be uncluttered and not distracting. And then if you are a brand or a business that's choosing to use a logo, or if it's a collective of more than one person on a blog or in a venture, then it's safest to use a logo. And you always want to test that logo out to see how it looks in that tiny little circle on Instagram, and to make sure that it's high contrast enough that it's easily read. And that it doesn't get pixelated or anything like that. So you always want to test it out and make sure that it's completely legible, even though it's really small. And so that's a really great way to kind of optimize and look at your profile photo to make sure that it's going to build as much connection as you'd like with first-time visitors to your profile. And then in terms of your bio, I think the bio is also a really important place. You have about 150 characters, I believe, and so you really need to make them count. And so in that, I always stress that it's important to don't restate your name line. If you've included like a description of yourself or what you do or some search terms, you've already put it in your name line. They've already seen it, so don't waste that space restating anything. And then you always want to include a clear call to action in your bio. Visitors who are interested in your profile, who've come and it's resonated with them, they want to follow you, they want to find out more about you. You want to spell out the next steps for what they should do. People like to be told what to do whenever they're interested in something and want to know next steps. So you should always include a clear CTA and drop in a link if possible into your website link, and try, if at all possible, to use a bit.ly link or something that you can track traffic, because whenever you add in that element of being able to track traffic from your Instagram profile to wherever you're directing them, that'll kind of help you gauge whether you need to change your approach or whether your CTA is strong enough and is really working. And then finally, I guess tips for the bio, I would say make sure that you're formatting it. You can add line breaks and spacers and emojis, all kinds of things to break up your bio. If you don't really pay attention to this, you can create a wall of words pretty quickly that most people won't want to read. So you want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point, and then at the very least include or increase rather readability so that people can figure out who you are and what you're about pretty quickly from just skimming over your bio.
Very cool. Those are some great tips. And people are on fire on actually, putting the Tailwind tips below. So I wanted to bring some of those up. For example, Lori goes, she goes, Tailwind tips, show your audience your authentic self, be genuine. Your audience wants to connect with real people. Very cool. And we do have a question I think was really good. This is from Leanna says, great chat. What are some of the most important KPIs on IG? If you had to choose one, would it be engagement or impressions or follows? What would you say to that, Kristen?
I would definitely say engagement. Engagement is so key. I think changes to Instagram's algorithms and just the way that posts and things appear in search and just on your feed. That while follows is important, we all want more followers. Impressions is handy to know your reach and how far you're getting out there in the Instagram world, but people actually, engaging with your content is going to deliver a lot of results. And in my opinion, of the three, that would be what I would center my attention on.
Rebecca, would you agree with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. What Kristen was just talking about in terms of the algorithm, it's just incredibly important at this stage that we understand how that works, how Instagram is personalizing a feed, and why it's so critical that you do focus on that engagement, also focusing on that optimization. Because if everybody isn't aware, when we saw that switch in 2016 from the algorithm to what we see today, Instagram is actually personalizing for you and your audience based on your use and interactions, which I'm sure you've seen this as you've logged in. So Instagram's looking at what is the likelihood that your audience is going to be interested in that content. Also, they're looking at your relationship with that person that's posting, and then also the timeliness. So how recent is that post? So when you think about engagement, that plays into all of that and makes it incredibly important that you're getting people into a relationship with you, that you're getting them back over to your content, that you're getting them interactive with your content. So something to really keep in mind is you're not just looking to rack up likes and followers, you're looking to build conversation, community, and that interaction, because those are direct signals back to Instagram that you are relevant, that you're interesting, that your content is really impacting and making a difference on your audience. And then that reach and those impressions start to come, because now you're expanding into a broader audience, or maybe a larger audience, as those people start to interact with you. But other people are also starting to find you as, say, you're using those right keywords, things that, or those right words, things that Kristen was talking about in optimization. So it might feel like there's a lot to it, but really it just goes back to building old school relationships on Instagram and making sure you're doing it often, frequently, on a daily basis, and keeping your audience in that conversation.
Very cool. So here's a great question from Megan. She goes, should you optimize your profile with hashtags or just keywords? And this goes back, Kristen, to what you were saying when you were talking about the bio and all the different tricks you had in for us to use in there. So what would you say to Megan? Would you recommend hashtags or just using keywords?
I actually think that you can get away with using both. I think hashtags are important, especially whenever you want to appear in searches for a specific hashtag. And so that's kind of the way that you get yourself into that search stream. But if, kind of putting hashtags in your bio, in your name, those places doesn't appeal to you. A lot of people tend to think that adding hashtags looks messy. The keywords are just as important, in my opinion, for really, at the very least, clarifying to people who you are and what you're about quickly, because you only have a few seconds really to make that impression when someone clicks over into your profile, for them to kind of skim over and see what you're about and whether you're worth a follow. So both of them, I think, are very important. Hashtags are functional for getting you, like I said, into those search streams, but the keywords are also necessary for readers to understand you and your presence.
Awesome. Great tips, man. You guys are on fire by giving us the Tailwind tips down below. Thank you so much for doing that. It's going to be up to the random drawing, because all these people are entering multiple times. It's awesome. So you have a better chance the more Tailwind tips you drop in the right below here. So what's number 3? What's the next big thing that we need to do if we really want to grow our account past 10K and beyond? So Rebecca, what's number 3? What's our third tip?
Number 3 is planning content that will resonate. And I think this is one that can feel the most daunting when we first get started is, how do I know what to post? How do I know what kind of content is actually gonna resonate with my audience? And then thinking into that algorithm, what is that content that is going to make people want to follow, is going to make people want to connect with me, and then is also going to keep them coming back on a consistent basis for more. So what we have put together and what Kristen has so wonderfully written about in this 10K guide is how you can quickly plan months worth of content and do it in a very easy way. So without a whole lot of heavy lifting, without you feeling as if you're having to shove, like 4 more hours into your day, which I know time is such a commodity for all of us and very, very precious. So Kristen, why don't you kind of break that down for us, walk us through that process of how can we identify what that content is that our audience is actually going to be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you folks are tuning in, you've caught a few of our recent Instagram, Facebook Lives. We've kind of touched on this too. But as far as making that content plan, we really start with identifying 5 subjects that you feel you're most qualified to speak on, and that will resonate with your audience. And so these are the topics that you can talk about all day, every day, that you know the most about, that you're the most comfortable with, and that my litmus test is always, can I teach somebody about this? And they will walk away knowing how to do it and also being excited about it. And so you using that kind of framework, you want to plot out 5 topics, just general content topics that you can speak on. And then in order to kind of start building out a content plan, then you kind of want to drag in another component about keyword and maybe hashtag research even on Instagram to find out what people are really searching, looking for, wanting to know around that topic. And then you want to incorporate those keywords, that hashtag research, the questions that are being asked into your captions, into your posts, into your videos and stories, and kind of spreading that information, addressing that information, and answering those questions in different ways. And the trick to using these 5 topics continuously throughout your content plan, especially the one that we go over in the book, is finding different ways to frame them. And so in the book, we go over the value method, which is just a different way. There's 5 different ways to frame the topic that you've chosen, whether it's you're gearing for inspirational content that day or educational. And there are a few other examples in there. And then just kind of framing your take on that topic differently, continuously throughout your content plan, so that while you're addressing the same point or the same general topic of conversation, you're doing it in different ways that feels fresh and authentic and interesting to your followers. And and that is all included in the ebook. It's a pretty big workflow, and we have a whole worksheet for you to fill out for you to kind of get to generating those ideas and then plugging it in through about 5 weeks of content that you can plan in just a few hours.
Awesome. Well, right now we're going to have a special guest come on, and Rebecca and I are going to be talking a little bit. We're going to answer some of you guys' questions. But one of the things, there are a couple of people who are asking, where is the ebook? And I'm going to make sure it's very clear especially for people who may be listening later on to the podcast, which we have a podcast, by the way. If you want to get this book, it's at bit.ly/10K-FB. That's bit.ly/10K-FB. And so we would love for you guys to go download that. And right now we have a special guest, Kevin from the Tailwind headquarters is going to drop the Tailwind tip of the week. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you. Hello, Rebecca. Hello, Jeff.
Hey.
Pardon me.
Yeah. So what's our tip of the week?
Yeah. So this is for people who are new to Tailwind for Instagram, or even just, getting started with a regular posting strategy on Instagram. People don't usually stick with, the first content schedule they set up, whether it's they choose to post once a week and they move to once daily or 3 times daily or something like that. So Tailwind makes it easy to adjust your schedule. We recommend the best times for you to be posting to Instagram in our app. You can add those time slots really, really easily. But if you ever need to adjust your schedule for a change in content strategy or a change in seasonality, or just for the week while you're on vacation or something like that, you can remove those time slots. You can switch to posting just once a day if you're posting more than that, or a few times a week for a short period of time. But what we don't do automatically is change the times that your posts were originally scheduled for. So even if your schedule changes, those posts won't automatically adhere to the new schedule that you set up. We do have a feature that's a little bit tucked away, which is why I wanted to call it out. So whenever you're viewing your smart schedule there on the right side of our publishing page, at the top, you'll see 3 vertical dots. And if you click on that, you'll see an option that says fill in time slots. If you click on that, that will force, you want to do this after you've adjusted your schedule, removed time slots, something like that, that will force all those old posts to adhere to the new schedule, because they'll be sitting in what we call custom time slots or temporary time slots. They'll have a little clock in the corner whenever you change your schedule up. So that will make them adhere to the new one. You can always drag and drop as well and manually adjust it. But if you have lots of content already scheduled out, maybe for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, this makes it a snap just to totally switch your schedule up. So that's what I wanted to call out. It's a question we get a lot. I'm on the customer success team, and just wanted to put that out there for everyone.
I love that tip for so many reasons. As a longtime Tailwind user, I had to figure that out myself. I thought I needed to move everything back to draft and then bring it back. So that tip is, it's like a hack within Tailwind that you just don't even realize is there.
Yeah.
It's a sneaky hidden feature.
It's not hidden anymore. Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks so much for coming on today. That was an awesome tip, and we really appreciate it. And let's real quick, Rebecca, as Kevin leaves, we're going to go ahead and bring up some of these great questions we've been getting. I got to pull this up because it's so funny to me. Megan goes, "I must have the selfie light," and so Megan, make sure you're adding those Tailwind tips down below, because we would love to send you one. One of the things that we did have a question. This is a really great one from Megan. She goes, I run a dog website. Should I have a separate, more personal Instagram for the fun stuff my own dog does, and use the brand name Instagram for other content, or do I combine them? That's a great question, and there's been multiple people who asked that. Rebecca, what are your thoughts about having 2 different Instagram accounts, one for personal, one for business?
Yeah, it is. In fact, it's something I just talked with somebody about yesterday, and it's going to depend on the type of business and also the kind of personal brand you want to build out. But Megan, in your situation, I think you can do a great job merging the 2, where you don't have to create 2 different Instagram accounts. You can create one that shares your heart, your business, why you started your business, what it's all about. You can share other dogs if that's what you're sharing on your dog website, whatever the case might be. And then also add in the fun stuff with your own dog. So as we think back to what Kristen was talking about in terms of what are those topics that you want to be known for. Well, one of them could be for, dog memes or fun things you can do with your dog. So just think about what one of those topics could be. Fun things you can do with your dog is a day out at the park, and just a quick little video of your dog out running around with you. So you just think about what are the things you do within your business, within your day, within your life that could fit into your actual business and brand, and then how to naturally work those in to, say, your 9 grid. So thinking about those 5 different topics, and could you come up with 1 post per week that's fun things to do with your dog that potentially you could share your own dog. So it may be a different way of looking at it, where you're not sharing the funny things your dog does every single day, but it does become a part of your brand. And what I think is so beautiful about that is it personalizes your brand as well. So people are now able to get a glimpse into your day-to-day, into your life, into the goofiness of your dog. Believe me, I speak as a dog mom who has 2 super silly dogs. And I would love to share them all day long. Kristen has the cutest little girl. So I know you've got the similar situation where you could probably share your daughter all day, every single day. And so it's just finding that balance of who's my audience, what are they looking for when they come to me, and if there is a distinct difference between your personal life and your business, then yeah, you might want to consider splitting that up. But I think more times than not, we overthink it and think we need 2 separate, when in reality, we don't.
Plus, it's just harder if you have more than one. It's hard enough to do one. For me, it'd be harder even to do 2. So, Kristen, now that you're back, I have a great question for both of you, but I want you to take the first stab at it. And this is from Nicole, and she goes, for frequency, are professionally looking photos more important, or quantity with good captions over quality that is slower to curate? That's a good question.
Good question. I am going to say professional looking photos. I think quality is definitely better over quantity. And the reason for that, I think, is even though it takes longer to find those photos and source them and do the overlays and, just create that content, it's probably going to be as impressive to your followers as it is to you. If you were scrolling through a feed and you saw this beautiful professional looking photo and you're like, that's a really nice photo, or you're looking at somebody's content that's maybe a little subpar and you're like, that looks cheap or quickly made, or, that looks spammy and I don't like it. So just as much as you would probably react to a higher quality of content, I think your followers are as well. And even though it may take a little bit more time and a little more effort, I think there's a payoff there in the engagement that you'll get.
Very cool. Rebecca, would you agree with that assessment? Because that's a good question. I mean, that's a really tough one that I know a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, I would definitely tend to agree with that, quality over quantity. Now, there's a debate going on right now about professional looking photos and this whole new wave of Instagram users that really doesn't care anything about professionally looking photos. In fact, they're pushing back pretty hard on that. And it's more about capturing those real life moments. So, those moments where they could be very, very candid. They're not structured. They don't feel as if, hey, we posed in front of the camera 400 times before we found the perfect picture. So again, I think it goes back to your brand. If you are a brand that is very much behind the scenes, in the moment, this is my life, this is what's going on. Good friend Brian Fanzo, that I know both you, Jeff, and I know, that's very much his brand. Is I'm walking through the airport and you're coming along with me, even if I just rolled out of bed and it's 4 a.m. There's just no fear there for him in terms of what he shares or how he shares it or where he shares it. And Kristen's like, oh no.
Yeah.
So it also goes, it also goes back to your comfort level of how much do you share, how often do you want to share, and how much time do you actually have to be on Instagram too. So it's thinking those things through, and just making sure it's all directly aligned with your brand so that it doesn't feel heavy, it doesn't feel overwhelming, which trying to shove yourself into somebody else's model is going to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. Very great point. All great tips. You guys have like filled up the Tailwind tips that we've been doing down below. So you guys are doing awesome. So let's go ahead and move on to tip number 4 for trying to grow your reach beyond the 2 or beyond the 10K. So Rebecca, what would be your first tip on for tip number 4? What would be tip number 4 from you?
So tip number 4 is, it kind of comes on the heels of what we were just talking about, which is designing your Instagram feed and really thinking through what do you want your feed to look like. And for me, that's all about the experience and what is it that you want your audience to feel. What do you want to take away when they land on your Instagram feed and for the first time they're going through all of your posts? So it's not just about the quality of the content, it's about your captions, but it's so much more than that. It's about your personality, and it's about your tone of voice, and it's whether or not can they hear the inflection when you're making a joke or you're saying something that you really want to get your point across. And I think that is the point of differentiation and distinction within Instagram at this point, is how well can you convey and say your 9 grid the exact feeling and emotion you want your audience to take away. And I would spend more time thinking about that than just about anything else, because again, this goes back to your brand and think about it in terms of, if your brand were a human being, what words would be associated with your brand? And then how do you live those? How do you breathe life into that through your Instagram content? And Kristen, I'll let you talk a little bit about that since you wrote so much about it in the 10K book. But I think it's a lot less difficult to start to design your Instagram feed when you come at it from that perspective, that this is just an extension of who you are. Your business is kind of a living, breathing entity. It's got a life of its own, and you just need to put a face to it.
Wow, Rebecca has a really holistic view of Instagram image planning. What I would really kind of go into, and what I tried to do whenever I wrote the ebook, was kind of lay out some functional tips for helping you kind of plan what your feed looks like and really get that engine going on creating images. And so the steps that it kind of walks you through and that we kind of go over in the ebook is, first and foremost, is really aiming for photo quality and composition. And so there are a lot of resources, I think, available online, or just kind of looking around photography blogs. There are many courses just about how to take better photos. And one of the tricks that I mean, it's really simple, but that I really started using and getting into and understanding is, and I don't know what it's called, I don't know the technical word for it, but like on my iPhone, is you can put the grid overlay whenever you're taking pictures. And so using kind of that grid, you can understand how your photo is going to look and kind of move things around for fresher perspectives, right? You can bring something interesting into like the front lower right corner of your photo for kind of an unexpected take if you're taking a picture of a tree or whatever it is. And just kind of playing with composition and making images that make people stop mid-scroll and realize like, oh, that's interesting, or that evokes a feeling like Rebecca was saying, or why do I find this interesting, and do I want to know more? And so I think that's a really powerful tool for designing your feed, is really getting familiar and comfortable with composing photographs in a new and interesting way. And that goes for video as well. And then kind of one of the tricks I personally use and I love, and I think about on the last Facebook Live, is kind of unifying the entire look of your Instagram feed with maybe you choose presets or a certain app that you can edit photos in the same way. I think Rebecca mentioned for this, she uses VSCO, and I rattled off a couple of them. There's a few I like. A Color Story is a really great one. I have the Lightroom app on my phone, and I have a set of presets that I use on my feed that I think appeals to me. But using the same method or what have you for editing your photos or adding a filter will really unify your 9 grid in a way that even if the photos, the subject of the photos aren't the same, even if the content is different, it still has that same look and feel. So everything seems really cohesive to a visitor to your profile, which will really appeal to them. And then one of my kind of lazy hacks, I think, for building out content and kind of staying ahead of the curve is I actually stockpile different photos and images, overlays, quotes, etc. on my phone and on my desktop. So if the well is running a little dry on the image that I want to post, I have kind of a rainy day stockpile that I can pull from and kind of keep myself ahead without getting dragged too far down into that what do I post next, what image, kind of freak out that we sometimes get into whenever we realize we need to post.
Right.
And then like Rebecca said, just really taking advantage of a 9 grid preview to kind of mix and match and make sure everything looks really cohesive and works well together, not just individually as one post.
Yeah, I want to bring up this comment because I thought this was great from Lorraine. She says, compose for the rule of thirds. Rebecca, can you explain what the rule of thirds is for people who may not know?
No.
You can't explain what it is? Okay.
No,
sorry, Lorraine. Rebecca is being very, very LA-ish. So.
What does that mean?
Kristen, you know what it means.
Wait, I think I know what this means.
Okay, I do. I know. That's why I brought it up. But if you guys don't know, go. What do you think it is, Kristen?
Well, it is. It has to do with that grid thing, doesn't it? Like
it does.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, well, why don't you actually explain it in a halfway technical term? But yes, I do know that.
Yeah, Jeff is our technical guy.
Yeah, I'm the nerd of the group. That's why they bring me on. The rule of thirds is the only thing you need to know is you can turn it on for your camera. So if you go into when she was talking about the grids, your eye is naturally drawn for things, and it's really great so that when you're taking photos, not just to line everything straight up and down, you want to kind of put it to the side, or you want to have it inside of those grids that you can turn on for your phone. And so there's whole stories, whole articles of it. It's called the Fibonacci sequence. It's kind of the way things happen in nature. And so it's just a better way to compose your photos. I have my grid thing on all the time because it just helps me compose photos better. And so that's all you need to know, really. Right? Is that simple enough?
That is very simple. And I don't enjoy using it, but I do see where it can definitely help you give that perspective that photographers talk about, where you can really zero in or focus in on what is that most important aspect within your picture. And if your eye doesn't just naturally go there, like Jeff was just talking about, turning that on, I have an iPhone, but I would assume Android has it as well. It can be very, very helpful, especially as you're getting started, if you're trying to figure out how you want to lay out your perfect picture and make sure that, to Kristen's point, your feed starts to really look unified and streamlined. This could definitely help.
Very cool. I wanted to pull up this comment from Dustin. It's because I think it's a great resource. He goes, Peter McKinnon has a great YouTube vid on product photography. Of course, that was a Tailwind tip. So thank you for that, Dustin. That's very, very cool. Yeah, there's tons of things on there. In fact, Rebecca's son is an incredible photographer and videographer, and he knows that even when you're watching TV, you never see people lined up straight on the TV, they're off to one side. You see them even when they pan, they're always, they're leading the subject. And so a lot of the stuff that you see naturally, because you've watched TV all your life, it's kind of the same thing. You just need to kind of be aware of it when you're shooting. And that little grid thing in iPhone just makes it really easy for that. So, okay, we are coming down to the wire. So we want to make sure we get all our tips in. So that was number 4, how to design your Instagram feed. Number 5 is great because this is a Tailwind show, and we're going to talk about how you can create your content schedule. So what is the best way, Kristen, to create your content schedule using Tailwind?
Number 1, use Tailwind.
There we go.
Simple. All right. Enough said.
All right, next. There's a couple different things kind of whenever building out a content schedule. First and foremost, you want to decide how often you want to post. And so we actually did our own research study a couple of years ago now, I think, just analyzing the activities of like top performing members and just the Instagram at large to see, who is getting the most engagement, who's getting the most followers, et cetera. And so if you want to see growth on your account, it's the results of that study are basically you should be posting at least once per day. And so with Tailwind, you can choose to schedule once per day. If you want to engage with your followers or give them content more often than that, you can choose how many times you want to post a day. And then Tailwind's auto scheduler will find the best times, the peak times that your audience is on Instagram and engaged, scrolling through their feeds, just waiting for your amazing content. And then it will push it out at that time. And then you also want to utilize hashtags. And we talk about this also, I think, quite a bit on our IG Lives, but just an overview of that is using a healthy mix of hashtags from some ultra competitive ones that are the hashtags with millions and millions of attached posts to them to ultra niche hashtags where there's very few, and then kind of that middle ground where there's lots of opportunity for your post to rank and hit a top post on search traffic for that hashtag. But the more hashtags that you use, and there's a 30 hashtag limit, the more that you use, the more your content gets pushed out into different search streams and is, somebody can happen upon it if they're looking for something similar to that. And then Tailwind, obviously, we have the hashtag list creator where you can, after you find all of those best hashtags for your post, if that's a piece of content that you post pretty often, then you can just save the entire hashtag list under a custom name, however you want to do it. You can save the entire caption if you want as a template, but then you don't have to go through all the work of typing in all of those hashtags again, which makes it really convenient if, again, you're posting the same type of content pretty regularly. And then finally, using auto post. I'm the worst with push notifications. I take delight in ignoring them, and that means that my content never gets posted. So whenever Tailwind rolled out the auto post option, that was a game changer for me, because I should not ever be in charge of answering push notifications or be held to posting anything on time with them. So yes. That would be my recommendation, is to use the auto post feature. Then you don't even have to worry about it. Your post will go out at that peak time and hopefully hit the most engagement it possibly can with all of those elements in it.
That's awesome. Yes, I totally agree with you, because that was just one more notification I ignored on my phone. It's like, oh, my mom called, swipe. Oh, I got to post, swipe, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes you're in the middle of things, and I always call her back, but, sometimes it's just not convenient. So, all right. So those are some great tips on creating your content schedule. Our last and final tip, Rebecca, I want you to take this one at the start. So, okay, we've done all this. We've gone at what can we use to continue to, if we're seeing some stuff start to happen, what are some, tips that you can give us to continue that growth?
Well, to recognize that this is an ongoing maintenance. So it's not a set it, forget it type of situation with Instagram. So much of what we talked about is something you need to continuously come back to. So if you think about just 3 different pieces that will help you and help really inform how you're doing, how you're tracking, consistently come back to your research. So looking at your audience, looking at your market, and then looking at your competitors. And those 3 are going to be a source of truth for you. So first of all, if you're constantly diving into your audience, so looking at what's your audience talking about, what words are they using, what phrases, what is it that they're interacting with already, to really understand that, hey, I've still got my finger on the pulse of what's going on, and really understanding what their problems are. Has anything new cropped up within your business, within your industry that maybe you haven't talked about, you haven't put your own take on? Because I know that's something we hear a lot about, which is, what if I'm in a really saturated market and all of my competitors are talking about the same thing? And the great part about that is there's nobody but you that has your own unique spin or take on that particular topic. So if you're constantly looking at the conversations that your audience is having, you can always stay on top of their pain points and making sure that you're solving those problems. And then likewise, doing your market research, making sure that you're on anything new or breaking or something that is critical to the success of your followers, or something that they need to know, they need to understand, they need to be aware of, so that you're always that one source that they can refer back to, that they don't have to go anywhere else, that you just seem to know everything, be everywhere, have all the information and all the answers that they need. And then your competitors, you're just looking to see what they're doing, what's working, what's not. What can you learn from that? You're never looking to swipe or steal. And I know we've said this, multiple times, whether it's in a blog post or whatnot, but this is an important piece, that you are looking to those that are succeeding and really understanding what they're doing that's successful, so that you can model that. As we know, success leaves clues, and there are clues all around us when we just take that time to do that research. So that would be my 3, of just constantly circling back around to that research.
Oh, that's a tweetable right there. Success leaves clues. That's very good. I'm gonna have to. I'll even give you credit for that one, Rebecca. That's awesome. So, Kristen, kind of wrap us up on this section on how to continue the momentum that we're getting now that we've started to implement some of these tips that you guys have given to get rolling past that 10K followers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rebecca made a really great point, and I think you should always be kind of watching, insights and analytics to kind of see what's resonating, what's working, what's not, and then make adjustments as necessary. It's an ongoing process. It doesn't just, live in a bubble. You've created all this growth and then that's it forever and it's static. It's constant maintenance and figuring out what works, if there's pivots that need to be made, et cetera. And then I think a really important key point after all of this is, after you've created all your content and really fine-tuned your approach to that, afterwards, you should really be focusing on creating a sense of community among your followers, finding different ways to engage them, maybe showing them, backstage scenes of your life, or sharing an inspirational quote, starting a challenge, or just inspiring conversation. And however you do that, in a myriad of ways, if that's in your captions, in your posts, in your videos, stories is an incredible place to build that engagement. And it's a tool that I think once you kind of master the functionality of your content pieces and the schedule and system, that you should really embrace using stories to build a community and reach that engagement with your followers. And there's tons of features on there I think designed specifically to help you do that. You can create polls, ask questions and get answers. I guess you can share your music now. You can do all kinds of stuff on there to really create not only a community, but that sense of relationship that we were talking about earlier. And I think that's probably the best way to keep that momentum going and growing.
That's awesome. Wow. So you ladies have dropped so much knowledge on that. It's almost a shame that we have to wrap it up here at the end of the hour. We want to thank everybody who's been watching, all of your great Tailwind tips that you've dropped down below, all of the stuff that you've shared. Can't wait. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to do the drawing, and you'll find out who's won. And if you're watching the replay, there's still chance you can still win this awesome Selfie light. Just drop in any nuggets that you hear during the show today and put the hashtag Tailwind tip right before that. And we'd also love for you guys to go to get this ebook that we've been talking about the entire time. And you can find it at bit.ly/10K FB. That's bit.ly/10K-FB. And the FB is capitalized, by the way. People have pointed that out in the comments below. So thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much for all your great, I mean, there's so much. I got to go back and watch this because there's so much good stuff here. You guys are amazing, as always. And we will see you guys next week on the Marketing Unleashed show as we talk all about Pinterest with Elisa Meredith. So we will see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Bye now.
Bye-bye.